For over 70 years, the relationship between America and Iran has been defined by coups, revolutions, assassinations, wars, and secrets. This story is about more than politics or ideology. It's about oil, power, fear, pride, and the lives of millions. Caught between the empires of Britain and Russia, the nation's future was uncertain. In 1911, Persia even invited American financial advisors to help modernize their economy. But as oil transformed the world economy, a new player would enter the stage. While British and Russian envoys schemed for influence, Americans were welcomed as honest brokers. Oil had just been discovered a black river beneath Persian soil. The world was changing. Before we reach today's crisis, we must go back to a time when the two nations were not enemies, but potential friends. In Washington, Cold War paranoia was at its peak. American officials worried that a weak Iran might fall to communism. The CIA and British MI6 found common cause. The Shah launched an ambitious modernization plan: oil well-funded highways, universities, factories, and a new middle class. Western fashion and music filled Tehran. Iran seemed to be racing toward the future. This is the story of how everything changed. Resentment grew. The Iran-Iraq War would last 8 years and kill 1 million people. The Shah's secret police, U.S. warships, entered the Persian Gulf, leading to bloody clashes. In 1988, the USS Vincennes shot down an Iranian passenger plane, killing 290 civilians. Washington accused Iran of supporting terrorism, seeking nuclear weapons, and destabilizing its neighbors. Iranian leaders denounced America's hypocrisy and imperialism. The U.S. claimed it was a mistake. Iran called it murder. Iran backed Hezbollah in Lebanon, Palestinian groups in Gaza, and militias in Iraq. The U.S. armed Israel, Saudi Arabia, and opposition groups. Every conflict, Lebanon, Afghanistan, Iraq, became another front in the hidden war. The country became poorer, but its leaders grew more defiant. Meanwhile, Iran developed alliances with groups like Hezbollah, fueling proxy conflicts across the Middle East. Hunted dissidents, shocked and confused, lost its most important Middle East ally overnight. The world watched as veiled women marched, music was banned, and old enemies of the Shah were executed. To Iranians, in Iran, the economy stagnated, but the government stayed defiant. It was payback for 1953. To Americans, it was an unprovoked attack by religious fanatics. The bitterness would not fade. Iran's new leaders blamed America for decades of oppression and for sheltering the Shah in exile. Torture and execution silenced opposition. While the elite partied, the poor suffered. Traditional religious leaders, led by Ayatollah Khomeini, denounced the regime's corruption and westernization. Imagine Iran, then called Persia, in the early 20th century. President Eisenhower. Protests erupted across Iran. Workers, students, clerics all united against the monarchy. The government cracked down with violence, but the anger only grew. Kennedy, Nixon, and Carter all saw Iran as a vital ally in the Cold War. Billions flowed in arms sales. The U.S. trained Iran's security forces, yet, each year, the Shah's rule felt less legitimate. In this era, the United States was a distant observer with no colonies or direct ambitions in Persia. Iranians admired American achievements. Persian students went to American colleges. The seeds of trust were planted. After months of unrest, the Shah fled Iran. Exiles returned home. Among them was a man who would change history. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Greeted by millions, he declared the birth of the Islamic Republic. By the late 1940s, British oil companies controlled Iran's most valuable resource. The Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, later known as BP, reaped enormous profits while most Iranians lived in poverty. Events took a darker turn. Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, taking 52 Americans hostage. The images shocked the world. Blindfolded diplomats, angry crowds chanting "Death to America." For 444 days, the hostages were paraded on television, and failed U.S. rescue attempts only deepened the humiliation. As Prime Minister, he did something extraordinary. He nationalized Iran's oil industry. Overnight, British control ended. Iranian oil now belonged to the people. The world watched in shock. CIA operatives orchestrated protests, bribed politicians, and spread propaganda. The streets of Tehran erupted in chaos. In just a few days, Mossadegh's government was overthrown. The Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi returned to power. Iranian democracy died that day, replaced by a monarchy backed by the West. In 1951, a charismatic leader emerged, Mohammad Mossadegh. The British were furious. They launched an international boycott, froze Iranian assets, and began plotting in secret. In August 1953, a covert operation began. Millions of Iranians never forgot this betrayal. The seeds of anti-Americanism were sown deep in the national psyche. With U.S. support, but beneath the surface, the Shah grew more dependent on U.S. weapons and advisors. By the late 1970s, in January 1979, America. In November 1979, the hostage crisis shattered relations between the two countries. In 1980, a new war erupted. Saddam Hussein, Iraq's dictator, invaded Iran, hoping to exploit chaos and claim disputed territory. America, fearing Iran's revolution might spread, secretly aided Iraq with intelligence, money, and military technology, even after Saddam's forces used chemical weapons. Inside Iran, the government tightened its grip. Dissent was crushed. The 1980s also saw covert American operations, from the Iran-Contra scandal to secret arms deals, as Washington tried to manage the chaos. After the war, Iran rebuilt, but U.S. sanctions crippled the economy. Both sides fought through proxies. Ordinary people suffered most. Sanctions meant shortages of medicine and food. Meanwhile, the world worried about Iran's nuclear ambitions. Would Iran build a bomb? Could America stop them without starting a new war? By the early 2000s, fears grew over Iran's nuclear program. The Stuxnet computer worm, developed by the US and Israel, infected Iranian nuclear facilities. Centrifuges spun out of control and self-destructed. Iran's progress was delayed for years. A new kind of warfare, cyber warfare, had arrived. Iran insisted its ambitions were peaceful, but the world was skeptical. The US and Israel considered military strikes. Diplomacy stalled. Secret talks led to the 2015 nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOO. Iran agreed to strict limits on its nuclear program, and in return, America and Europe lifted many sanctions. Then, in 2010, something unprecedented happened. But Iran would not be stopped. Both governments unleashed propaganda on social media, television, and in the press. Each side accused the other of terrorism, human rights abuses, and conspiracy. The government pushed forward with uranium enrichment, even as sanctions tightened. Ordinary Americans and Iranians became targets for manipulation. Fear and suspicion became weapons. Millions attended his funeral. Iran launched missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq miraculously. No Americans died. The world braced for a loud war, but both sides stepped back from the brink. Iranian doctors unable to get medicine because of sanctions. American soldiers wounded in proxy wars. New generations in both countries question the old narratives. It is a warning about the dangers of power, the price of intervention, and the long shadows cast by history. Families separated by politics. Dreams shattered by decisions made in distant capitals. Or are the wounds too deep to heal? Only time will tell. Behind every headline are millions of lives shaped by decisions made in secrecy and fear. The people suffered, but national pride grew. The West feared a nuclear-armed Iran. Tehran feared another coup or invasion. Each move brought the region closer to war. In 2013, a new Iranian president, Hassan Rouhani, promised engagement with the West. For the first time in decades, there was hope. Iranian students dreamed of visiting America. U.S. companies had new markets. Trade flourished briefly. America's maximum pressure campaign aimed to crush Iran's economy. Iranian oil exports collapsed. Food prices soared. Protests rocked the country. But critics in both countries hated the deal. Hardliners in Iran called it surrender. American hawks called it appeasement. In 2018, the Trump administration withdrew from the JCPOA, calling it the worst deal ever. Sanctions returned. the Iranian economy collapsed, and hostility reached new heights. With the nuclear deal dead, both sides escalated. Iran responded with attacks on oil tankers, drone strikes on Saudi refineries, and the downing of a US drone. Proxy groups targeted American bases in Iraq. In January 2020, America shocked the world by killing Qasem Soleimani, Iran's most powerful general, in a drone strike. While bombs exploded and diplomats argued, a different battle raged online. Fake news, cyber attacks, and information warfare blurred the truth. Yet in private, many citizens in both countries wanted the same thing: peace, security, and opportunity. Lost in the headlines are the stories of real people. Despite the hatred pushed by leaders, many Americans and Iranians have reached out across borders: scientists, artists, students, athletes, proving that enmity is not inevitable. Today, the future is uncertain. Iran's nuclear program continues, but so do talks. Sanctions still bite, but the regime endures. Will America and Iran find a way to coexist? Or will another spark set off a new war? The story is not finished, but one truth remains. The real victims of this conflict are the ordinary people whose voices are rarely heard. The story of America and Iran is one of betrayal, pride, and misunderstanding. As you finish this story, ask yourself, is peace possible? If you found this story eye-opening, share your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe for more untold stories.